You can't hear me. Wow. Once again, thank you all for letting me know. So I'm going to do this intro all over again because after what, 2.5 years in the hybrid world, I have yet to figure out how to take myself off mute. So once again, welcome to another iteration of AMA with LCJ. I am so excited for you to join me. Thank you for having me. Spend this hour together, diving in and investing in yourself. Lamika, Mike, Jess, thank you all so much for the chat. I guess it would help if I had the chat open. So before we get started, one of the things I want to let you know is let me know where you're watching from, if you have questions, if you have concerns, all of the things, make sure that you put them in the chat. I'll be able to see them because I want this to be as interactive as possible, especially now that I've taken myself off of mute. Goodness gracious, y'all. You gotta love it. Here's what's funny. I probably should have caught that because I do have like LinkedIn here on the left-hand side. And so the tool I use, I can't actually post directly into LinkedIn from the tool. And it's hilarious because I should have known because the caption wasn't coming up. Bless it. All right. So we're going to hop in and we're going to talk about the art of slowing down to speed up. Yo, Lamika says she's hopping in from the Bat Cave. I love it. I love the Bat Cave. If you guys see me sipping on tea a lot, I'm like slightly under the weather today, but we're going to make it. All right, so let's talk about this. So before we hop in and I post questions, I really want to talk about the art of slowing down to speed up. For those of you all who are subscribed to my newsletter, you guys got an email from me today. And today, in that email, it really talked about a couple of things. It talked about really how we start wrapping up the year and how do you wrap up the year in a meaningful way. And I'm a big fan of quotes. And so I want to share one of the quotes. I typically like to start including quotes into my newsletters at the top. And one of the things that the quote today was celebrate what you want to see more of. Celebrate what you want to see more of. And so as we talk about slowing down to speed up, when we think about the art of this, it is so important that amidst the hustle and bustle of ending the year, that we are taking time to figure out what worked, what didn't work, and then how you try not to bring that into the new year, if you will. So one of the things that, I think becomes really tough is if you think about the mentality often of what we do at the end of the year. Right? Everybody's like, run, 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 run. I'm running, trying to get it to the end of the year, trying to make it to the end of the year, get everything wrapped up. And then the beginning of the year comes, and then we try to create these things. And the reason why I'm talking about wrapping up the end of the year now in November and not in January is because you should already be thinking about it. If you're thinking about what you want for the beginning of the year now, you're on track. If you're thinking about what you want to hit for the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the year, I would venture to say that you're behind. And so I often like to use this time because here's the other thing. Any of you all know who work in some type of corporate environment, business environment, professional environment, what happens come November, December? Everybody starts slowing down. People start going out of town. People are out of office. And then you may have a little bit more of discretionary time. And so oftentimes what we will do, I don't know about y'all, I may be slightly type A, just a smidge, right? So we have this extra discretionary time as we start to go towards the end of the year because, people are in and out of the office. And so what do? We fill it with more work. That's what we do. Right? And so I want to challenge you when we think about the art of slowing down to speed up, could you take some of that discretionary time that you're trying to like cram more work in and take that time to actually reflect? Right? Have you set aside some time to really be like, okay, you know what? This worked really, really well. Team meetings, format of my team meetings, that worked really well. Team, what did you think about that? Right? One-on-ones, that worked really, really well. What do I want to accomplish next year as a leader, as a professional over this next year? What did I say that I was going to do? Did I do those things? How can I set myself up to do that? And I think oftentimes what happens is people just want to wait till the end of the year. But I'm not the biggest, I mean, the beginning of the year, I'm not the biggest fan of that. Because I think when you have a little bit more discretionary time and things are slow, it gives you a little bit more capacity. Because here's the other thing that happens. Let me know in the comments that I'm not alone. Give me an amen, a thumbs up, or something like this, right? You know what happens? Here's what happens. You all know what happens, right? Everybody slows down, everybody disappears, everybody goes away, right? Pretty much starting next week, right? People are up, down, in, out, all the things, right? And we're trying to figure it out. Now, here's what happens. Come January, okay? You know, everybody, okay? I'm gonna get country with y'all. You know, everybody, okay, is trying to jam everything that they didn't get done towards the end of the year to the beginning of the year because they know they left some stuff undone. So even when you think that you're going to come back in January and like get it together, typically January is met with a little bit of chaos because everybody's coming back, they're rested, they're refreshed, and then they're going to give you all the demands. I mean, can I get an amen somewhere in the corner? I know this happens for a fact. So using this time, Nicole, I love what you said. Nicole says, these are great suggestions and an opportunity to get some collaborative feedback from the team too. That is 100% right and exact. Like that is what we're supposed to do, right? Like get the feedback now, right? So one of the things that we think about when we think about slowing down to speed up is I'm actually going to go before we talk about teams and how to set that up. Let's talk about you for a minute because I think this is important. Leaders, aspiring leaders, professionals. I want to talk to you first before we talk about like team and how we finish out the team strong with goals and everything else. I think one of the things that when we look at how we approach our goals, our professional goals, our leadership goals, is not taking enough time to do it. Right? How many books do you want to read next year on leadership? How many books a year do you want to read about your craft? Right? How much time do you want to spend in development? You should have an actual number for that. So as you're thinking about slowing down, speed up, I'm not saying that you even take on more for this year, but I'm going to ask you for next year, what does that look like? Do you know what your gaps, what are your gaps? What are some skills and things that you're seeing in the workforce that are coming up that you need to broaden your horizons on, right? I did a session maybe few weeks ago on AI and just ways that I like to use AI. And I use it every day. Do you know enough about it? Do you know what that looks like? What is the current climate? What is the workforce? What are some of the challenges? What are the challenges in your area of expertise? Where are some ways that you can sharpen the saw, as John C. Maxwell says? Take that time. Figure that out. Because the other thing that it'll help you do is, one of the questions that I have for us today, which is how should I approach setting my own leadership goals for the next year, and how do these goals impact the team? Let me make this one really, really clear. This is a good question. How should I approach setting my own leadership goals for the next year, and how do these goals impact my team? Let me help you. They absolutely impact your team. And how should you approach them? I think when you look at what your leadership goals are, think about your team. Think about challenges that you've had with your team. Now, I'm not saying, maybe you have a perfect team. Maybe there were no challenges. I don't know. I could be wrong. But as a leader, when you think about your leadership development goals, what are some areas that you could start to broaden? Is it communication? Is it conflict resolution? Is it priority training? Like, is it process improvements? What are some things that you can skill yourself up because those are the things where your team is lacking. This is really going to help you kind of move things together, right? So Jess has a question. She says, as a new leader, I'm barely keeping my head above water, tackling the tasks and the deadlines I have. How do I find time? Oh, this is my favorite. Oh, this is a good question, Jess. I love this question. Okay. How do you find time? Okay. This is not going to be probably an answer you want to hear, but how do you find time when you're trying to figure all these things out? I could go the traditional route and say, make time, right? But the reality is you have to make time, right? So there are some things that when you think about, like, these are the things I absolutely have to get done. Those things have to get done, period. But what I want to shift your mindset, this is more like a mindset shift, right? Because it becomes easier to find the time when you understand what's at stake when you don't do it. It is absolutely imperative to the success of your career and the success of your team that you find the time to figure out how to develop yourself and figure out what the goals and plans are for you professionally to do that too. If you realize that it's just that important, then you'll find the time. Right now, a lot of times what the struggle is, and I've fallen victim to it too, right? Like, I know exactly what that feels like, because it's like, okay, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I've got all the things, and then more things are coming in. I don't have time to focus on me. But the reality is you can't afford not to. Because as you become a better leader, you become a better coach, as you become a better leader, it starts to it will all trickle down, right? And so sometimes it may not be that you can have a ton of time, right? It may just be, 30 minutes. I don't know if Lamika's still watching, but I had a rule. I had a rule when I had a rule for my team. And the rule was no meeting Fridays. And my challenge was every Friday, I didn't care how much time they spent, but they put 1 hour aside, at least 1 hour aside, to work on themselves every Friday. So then it became a part of the system. So the other question I would ask you, Jess, is what system have you put in place for you to be successful in, like, pouring into your, like, in building that, right? So if you struggle to find the time, one of the easiest ways to make the time is set the appointment. Right? Say, okay, every Friday from 9 to 10 o'clock, or every, Friday from 10 to 11 o'clock. I'm going to spend this time either researching or learning about my industry. I'm going to spend this time in professional development, like all of those things. And I set the X so people knew that about me, right? I'm not meeting with you on Friday. Like, the house has to be on fire. Oh, see, Lamika, I knew she was still on here. Lamika said, yep, no meeting Fridays, right? Because as leaders, growth mindset has to be as important as the work. Because if you can teach you as a leader or a growth mindset, that trickles down to your team with the growth mindset. When that happens, you will get better results. That's what happens. That's how it manifests, right? So if you think about what that looks like, that is really tough. It's tough, but it's necessary. Okay. Nicole has a question. I'm loving it. Y'all got all the questions today. Let's go. Okay. Let me know if you got any more questions. We're going to be answering them, because I'm going to answer any questions you want before I even put mine up. It says, how do we get that mindset shift into the organization as a whole? Many leaders don't see the value or potential impact. Oh man, that's a good one. So one of the things that I think about from a mindset shift of an organization as a whole is I kind of sometimes think of it like top down, bottom up. When you have a team that is performing well, and then it kind of starts to spread. So I'll give you a great example. When I was in corporate, I would go and I would talk to leaders, and we'd have conversations and they'd ask me questions about like, how, it was culture, diversity, and inclusion, but a lot of times we were talking about people and how do you lead people and different types of people and all of these different things. And so often my no meeting Friday rule would come up, right? And it really kind of started to spread over a period of time. And I remember like a month or so later, I ran into one of the leaders where I talked about why I did, no meeting Fridays and like the importance of investing in themselves as leaders. And it really impacted them. And so they had a rule and they were like, hey, don't touch my LaToya Friday. So they had named the Fridays after me. And so I think sometimes, it would be great if we could shift the mindset of an entire organization. But I started to do it kind of little by little, right? So it started with my team. And then I think it started to spread broader. If somebody said, hey, what are you doing differently? What does this look like? How are you getting this done? Then I just continue to like evangelize what that looks like, right? And here's the reality. Here's the other thing. Most people, I think it says on average, like most people are probably working like in total. They may be on the clock for 40 hours a week, but they're not spending all that time. Right. And so as much as the work is important, you have to develop yourself. And so a lot of, like you said, like a lot of leaders don't see the value or the potential impact. I probably go more along the lines of asking for forgiveness than permission. Right? Like if you say, hey, I've got this, this is the advantage of scheduling it. If you have standing meeting at 9:00 every Friday, the time is just blocked. What you do with that time. Now, there may be times where you have to move it and it's discretionary, but protect it. And then over time, it becomes something that I think can really impact the culture. I say this often. This is one of my favorite things. You'll hear me talk about it all the time. But when it comes to culture, rent is due every day. And you have to have a culture of growth mindset in order to create high performing teams. Right. So I did I did a survey, I launched a leadership survey. Some of you all know about that, and helped participate and gave feedback on that leadership survey. And in this leadership survey, I'm going to give you guys a great example of why all of this is important. So some of the responses that I got from leaders, top 3 things that leaders struggle with. Number 1 was priority alignment. Number 2 was change management, which included like communication and all these things. Number 3 was motivation, engagement, and or burnout. Right? Those are the top 3. Coming in at number 4, number 5, and number 6, I'm going to give you guys these because they were all just that close. Number 4 was performance management. Number 4 was performance management. Number 5 was time management and or work-life integration. And then goal setting. So see how all of that was really, really close. So a lot of these things you have to spend time thinking about and setting aside. If you're not setting aside time to think about it and figure it out. If you're not setting aside thinking time, you got to think. You got to set aside thinking time, right? If priority alignment, almost 50% of the leaders who did this survey, 49.4% said their number 1 struggle was priority alignment, which is setting priorities, competing priorities, and senior leadership. How are you going to get priority alignment if you don't slow down or speed up? You've got to have the conversations. And now is the time to have the conversations because people are they starting to kind of, get that little lull, right? And so you can maybe take it because you're not in the fire or, and I get it. Every industry also has ebbs and flows, right? Every industry has different times of the year. Nonprofits have different times of the year that are busy versus not. Tech busy versus not, depending on what industry you're in, right? Government busy versus not. So you got to figure out what that is. But like, especially those of us who are based in the US, Like now is the time, typically things slow down and you can start to have these meaningful conversations. But if 50% of leaders say that priority alignment is an issue, that's because they're not slowing down to speed up. They're not. You're not taking time to think. You got to figure out, okay, we'll go back to the quote. We'll go back to this quote again. Celebrate what you want to see more of. Can you right now, individually or as leaders, tell me what you want to celebrate? What went well? What do you want to see more of next year? If you can't answer that question off the top of your head, you've got to set some time aside and really kind of think through what that looks like. And then how do you duplicate that? Right? Because if you're not doing it, then it's it's kind of like it's a hope strategy. And hope is not a strategy, right? Like it's like, hey, things went well. I want things to continue to go well, but can you tell me how they went well? Do you know what went well? I guarantee you could tell me what didn't go well. There's not a person on this live right now who probably could tell me 3 things they wouldn't do different next year. I'd be surprised. Most of you all can say, I do know what I don't like. But the goal is to duplicate the success. Right? And so, man, this just came to my mind. So here's the thing. This is what I want you all to think about. This is really, oh man, I just got really excited here. Here's what I want you to think about. If we know what we don't want, right? Like that's very clear. Hey, this didn't go well. I know I don't want this. This is not going well in my career. This is not going well in my team. All of that. Get that. Totally understand. But the magic is when you think about it that way, you're playing defense. You're playing defense as a leader. You're playing defense as a professional. Right. And so when I'm trying to say, hey, celebrate what went well, figure out what went right, how do you get more of that? It puts you on the offense. Spending that time growing yourself, spending that time figuring out how you got those successes and ways to either move faster, amplify, figure those things out, puts you on the offense. And so as leaders, sometimes, especially as leaders, it can become super duper hard, right? Because if you feel like you're always firefighting, or depending on what industry you're in, I came from the DEI space, you were always firefighting, right? So you're always on the defense. And so what I'm trying to get you to understand is it's important to be on the offense. If you can get in that offensive mindset, so now it's like, hey, I'm going after the things that I like, right? Because if you can tell me what went wrong and you can give me a whole list of what went wrong, but you can't really tell me what's right and how you can duplicate what's right, you're playing defense, not offense. So that's what you got to figure out, right? As leaders, that's what you got to figure out as professionals, right? If you're saying, hey, I want to eventually be a professional, this is what I want to go after. I want to be a leader, or I'm leading by influence, whatever that looks like. I personally believe everybody's a leader, right? That's what you got to do. You got to figure out how to play offense, right? I hope that, let me know if that's resonating with y'all, because I think this is really important. LinkedIn's a little quiet. YouTube is popping. But let me know if that makes sense, right? Like, stop playing defense, figure out how to get on the offense, right? Like playing offense, right? Like, how are you going after it? And I think focusing on that becomes a big, huge piece of the puzzle. Let me know if that resonates. All right. So I don't think we have any more questions as of yet. I'm just waiting, make sure, because I know sometimes there's a little bit of a lag, right? Okay, so Nicole says, yes, love that approach. Be on the offense versus defense. Love that. That's it, right? Like, we got to do that. Sometimes I wait because I have to remember. I have to remember there's a slight delay on the stream from what I'm saying. So when I ask a question, I'll sometimes continue to go on, but forget that there's probably like a 30 second to a 60-second delay from when you guys get it down the pipe. Yes, Nicole says, always feels like we're on the offense. Right. I mean, on the defense. Like, that's where we've got to figure this out. Right. So as you are going into the new year, and we're talking about slowing down to speed up, for those of you all who are just joining, thank you for joining. I appreciate all the time that you guys are taking to watch. Um, and join me if you have questions. I love to answer them live. It is super duper important that I'm answering questions that you have, not just the ones that either come to me or prepared. And so if you have questions about anything I'm talking about, we're talking about slowing down to speed up, how to really wrap the year up, let me know. I want to answer them. All right, so we're gonna keep having we're gonna dive into another question because I don't see any more coming in. And so this one's really good. I love this one. Okay. So we're talking about slowing down to speed up, right? So how do I involve my team in the goal setting process in a way that is meaningful and doesn't add to their stress? This one's fun, right? How do I involve my team in the goal setting process in a way that is meaningful and doesn't add to their stress? So I'm going to go back to mindset, right? So as we're talking about slowing down to speed up, I like to start I think it's important to start having the conversations, right? Um for those of you all who have kids, right? Typically when you're about to ask a kid to go from what we'll say is favorable to a not favorable, I don't even know if that's the correct word. Unfavorable, maybe it's unfavorable. Jess will correct me later. um But when you're going from something that they want to do to something that they don't want to do, right? Typically, what happens is you start to give like these signals, right? Be like, hey, it's getting close to bedtime. We're going to have to take a bath soon, right? Like, that's kind of the first one. And you're like, okay, we got like 5 minutes left. 5 minutes left playing the game, 5 minutes on tablet, right? We're going to start to, right? So you see where I'm going with this? And so, as leaders, and even for ourselves, I think one of the ways that you can do this, where you can involve your team in the goal setting process and assessments without the stress, is starting to have the conversation, starting to drop the little breadcrumbs. Hey, we're wrapping up the year, guys. I think start thinking about some things that went really well and some things that didn't go well. And here's if just in case somebody has a questions, well, we already do that because I do end of year feedback and we do all these other things. That's great. But the reason why I like to do this as a team is because, if you think about it, most companies have you assess everybody individually, right? This person has end of year review, their mid-year review, end of year, individual. Every conversation typically that you're probably having around performance and around goals are set at the individual level, right? But you're not just responsible for each individual person doing their job, but you have to also look at the collective as a leader. You've got to have the 10,000-foot view. So if you're not having that conversation with your team here, I think it's very different than the performance conversations. Hey, y'all, how did we work together? What did that look like? What do you think we did really well together? How many of you have even been on a team that a leader has asked that? Don't worry, I'll wait. I'm going to sip my tea. Hey, y'all, what do you think went good? What are some areas of opportunity? What are some things that we want to do as a team this year? Imagine how invigorating that is. Going into the new year, like, yes, like we made it, we did it, and we have a plan. Versus sometimes what ends up happening is how many of y'all people going across the you dragging, like the like the little military people, like you're clawing your way to the end of the year. And so what I think is important about this is, as you think about it, setting goals should never be stressful. Setting goals, if you're stressed setting goals, then that's a mindset shift we have to look at anyways, right? Nicole says none, or maybe one leader has asked, right? What we can do better collectively. How do we work better together? I think it's funny. I think it's quite ironic that most of the time how we evaluate work is on an individual basis, but you never typically do most things by yourself in an organization. How odd is that? Right? So how do you get them? Like that's the big key piece of it. So how do you get them involved? I think you start having the conversations, you start dropping the little breadcrumbs that, hey, start thinking about what you want to get done for the year. I think it's really awesome that people are going into the break here, right? It's so weird because my camera's mirrored and so it's throwing me off. But like, right, so you're here and like you're nearing you're nearing the end of the year. And so you're starting to have conversations about, hey, what went well? What went great? What about this, right? And then here's the beginning of the year. And so although work is still happening and work is winding down, what you're doing is I'm thinking about how do I re-energize them? Here's the other thing as a leader. Man, I just had this moment. I don't want to send my team into their holidays worn out and burned out with their families. I want to send them onto their holiday break in a good space. Right? Because like, let me tell you, holidays is already a thing. Like, let me know if I'm not by myself in this one, right? The holidays are already like all the things, right? You got cooking, you've probably got cleaning, you've got relatives coming, you've got gifts to buy, you've got parties to attend, you've got all of the things on top of that, right? And so I don't want to send my team in to their holidays with their family, worn out, burned out, all the things. So how do you do that? Like I'm going to start to have energizing conversations heading into the end of the year. We're going to figure out how to have energizing conversations. What does that look like? Hey, what worked well? What got you on fire? What are you looking forward to next year? Those are the conversations I'm starting to have. I'm not neglecting today's work, but I'm trying to get them to also make sure that we're looking into the focusing in the future and how do we amplify that moving. So then what happens is when they come back to the new year. So now I'm going to come back over here because, I've ran out of space, but now we're at the new year, right? And so we've been doing this because we've been energizing, and they're going to take a break for the holidays and they're going to unplug. And so when they come back, they're energized and they already have a plan, and we're going here out like rockets. Like rockets. Versus typically what happens is this. We're here. And even as work slows down, stress goes up. And then we get to the new year and you're probably coming out. Hold on, let me see. Okay, there's a way right here. So when you hit the new year, you're not here when you hit the new year. You're here because you went into the new year. You went into the holiday worn out and burned out, right? So those are things that I think are really important for us as leaders. Start to think about, like, let's shift the conversation on what the end of the year should look like. And I get it. It's probably slightly different. And what that looks like, but I think it's important to send your team out into the break like as energized as possible. I say as possible because depending on the industry, like, let's keep it 100. Like if you're in retail, if you are in any type of consumer goods products types of things, it's gonna be a lot, right? But I think what does that look like to still send them into those breaks as whole as possible, right? As leaders, what does that look like? I remember when I was in sales, like, Black Friday, we were there, what they call bell to bell, 7 to 7, 7 to 7, or 9 to 9. Those are the 2 shift options, right? And you're like on like call, like you're getting call after call after call after call for Black Friday. And all the way through Cyber Monday. Those are 12-hour days, right? And in those moments were they hard, but those are some of the best memories I have of my time, honestly, at Dell. some of my best memories were on that sales floor because we had amazing leaders that said, hey, we're in the trenches, but one, we got your back. But then number two, like, while we're here, we're going to take care of you. And like, we had fun, we had spiffs, we had incentives. Like, there was so much that, like, especially as things got harder, they were figuring out ways at times to make the environment better, right? Because sometimes you can't control what you can't control. Sometimes the volume is the volume. Sometimes the work is the work. But how are you as a leader thinking outside of that, right? And like, the holidays brings a unique set of challenges for everybody, depending on, people have different sets of circumstances and family situations that sometimes can make or past make the holidays difficult. And so what do you know about your team? I always go back to, do you know your team? How well do you know your team? What's going on? What do they have the capacity for? These are all things that you could be thinking about with a level of care and empathy heading into the end of the year. Right? Okay. Any questions? Y'all are quiet. Y'all don't went quiet on me. Let me know what other questions you have around end of year. And then we're gonna go into probably some fun stuff here in a minute. I got another question. Let me know if you got any other questions. If not, we're gonna hop into another one around end of year. And actually, I just hold on there. I dropped that in the wrong spot. Here we go. All right. So next question we have. I should have brought more tea. Oh man. All right, here we go. So we're talking about end of the year, slowing down to speed up. I love this question here, which it says, how can I effectively recognize and celebrate my team's achievements, especially in a remote or hybrid environment? This is a fun one. So how can I effectively recognize and celebrate my team's achievements, especially in a remote or hybrid environment? This one's fun. I've really, honestly, due to COVID and everything else, we've had to get really creative on how we celebrated and kind of what was going from there. So I will actually, I'm going to show you versus kind of explaining how I did it as a leader. So I'm actually, give me 1 second. I'm a horrible multitasker, as you can see. Let me share my screen. Hold on. I'm going to presenter view. Okay. All right. All right. So I'm going to share exactly how I did this. Okay. Got it. Oh, okay. This is not the view I wanted, but oh, you gotta love it. Hold on. I picked the wrong one. Okay, here we go. Nope. Nope. Oh, yeah, there we go. Got it. Okay. Audience window. Okay. So in a hybrid environment, and let me know in the comments if this is maybe something that you would want me to share out. I can make it a resource that's available. So what we did was, let me remove this. There we go. So what I did was, it's end of year, it's holidays. We were a global team. And so one of the things that I did was hey, we're all over the place. There's different traditions, different religions, different backgrounds, all of those things. So how do we celebrate end of the year? Well, we all came together. And one of the first things that I did was I created a Christmas playlist. And so I had everybody give me their favorite holiday song or holiday. I wouldn't even say Christmas, I say holidays. Like around this time of year, what's like, what are your favorite songs? And I put that all together with Spotify and played it. And it was so awesome because it was like different languages, different cultures. Like it was like the perfect playlist. I still love that playlist to this day. And so then this is what I did. So I basically said, hey, get to know each other. Like, what does this look like? Let's talk about, share one of your favorite holiday traditions, right? And so I thought what I found was really cool was, different people have different holidays, even if they don't practice, I'd say even traditionals, there are certain things that they did, what they loved about it. Um, this one, this one was fun. Favorite holiday song, right? So everybody got to go around and say what their favorite holiday song was. Everybody talked about their favorite holiday movie. Didn't have to be like Christmas related. What their best gift was, what their worst gift was hilarious, and then what was their memory. Now, I want to stop right here because I think this is really important as leaders. This was a really fun exercise for the team, but what I loved about this and having a team meeting and we're all getting to know each other and how we're celebrating the end of the year, I loved this because it gives you a glimpse into the person and it gives them a glimpse of each other. Right? When people start to talk about like their favorite holiday song or their movie or their best gift or their worst gift or like their favorite memory, what ends up happening is you unlock something. Like it becomes a way to really bring the team even closer together. You'll find and learn things about a person that you never even knew to begin with when you do certain things like this. And it even gives you an insight of a leader. You'd be like, huh, that really caught my attention. And that made me think about this time with this person. Right. So this was a really fun one. So, and then this is like, and remember, I did all this hybrid. I had a hybrid team. And so then I did a holiday scavenger hunt. And so I'll talk a little bit more about like end of year celebrations, but this is kind of one of the things that we did, right? So it was a holiday scavenger hunt, and we gave them 5 minutes. So I said, hey, you got 5 minutes to find these holiday items. And so boom, right? And then they went through and they had to do all of these things. And it was so much fun to kind of watch the team, like they're scrambling, what they came up with. Some of the stuff was just wild and out. It was just wild and out there. It was so much fun. And then what we did was we went on to talk about like, basically categories, true, false. There we go. I added questions, and then I created some questions. I think they're in here. I'm pretty sure they are. But some of them were around, like how could I, ask questions that were based on different parts of the country, not the country, the world. Right. So what were some of these different traditions in different places around Ireland? I had people in Ireland. I had people in Mexico at the time. Right. So like all of these really cool little pieces of the puzzle. And so that's how I ended my end of year celebration. And that is, it's not something completely right there, but like celebrating the team's achievements, I think this was kind of one of the ways that we did that. And then, I typically had a slide. I don't have access to that slide anymore, but like, hey, these are all the things that we accomplished this year. Right. So even before we get into it, it's like, hey, before we get into the fun, let's just talk about what we've accomplished this year. Like super excited, give some holler outs. Like I typically tried, if you did each and every person, like, there were plenty of times I could go into, like, hey, thank you, such and such for doing this. This person did this. This person did this. Can you find something to celebrate about each individual person? And so they can feel celebrated. And they can feel happy about the achievements and the work that they've done. At the end of the day, as a leader, I want to say as a leader, I think as individuals, people want to be seen and they want to be recognized for the work that they do. Yes, that is what they get paid to do. Right and exact, right? Like I'm not I'm not saying that's not the case, but I think thank you goes a very long way. If you want to really kind of know, we had a conversation even last week about the paradigm of gratitude in leadership and why that's important. And we talked about that last week. But I think those are things that we have to think about consistently as leaders, right? So how do you really get that? What does that look like, right? So I'm trying to think here. What's the last question? You guys have got quiet. Let me know if you have any other questions. I want to make sure I get those answered. If you have some, drop them in the chat. I'll make sure I answer them before we hop off. But we're talking about slowing down to speed up, the importance of setting goals, putting things in place for us as you're heading into the new year as leaders, right? So help me understand, like, what questions, if there's any burning questions you have, things that I've done, things that I've seen that have worked, that haven't worked. I'd be more than happy just to share my thoughts and insights on that. All right. If not, I don't see any other questions here. I'm going to toss up another one. So here's a question. Okay. This one I like. So how can I effectively set goals and plan for the upcoming year, considering ongoing uncertainties, including or like economic challenges or global events? So I like this question. As I think it's a good question. We may or may not end on this one, depending on any feedback we get from the people watching, from the audience. How do you set goals and plan for upcoming year, considering ongoing uncertainties, like in the market, global events, economic challenges, etc.? Okay, Nicole, I got your question. I'll make sure I answer that. So one of the things that I think about is when we think about uncertainties, like whatever's going on out in your four walls of your organization, outside your four walls of the organization, when you're thinking about setting goals for the upcoming year, it's important to think about what you can control and what you can't. I often think of, and I tell my team this all the time, when you set goals and what you have to do, typically what we want to do is we hold them like this, right? So this is what I want to do, this is what I want to achieve, and we hold them, right? And the reality is that the world has become, it's a lot going on. It's very noisy. It's a lot that's happening around the world. And it can become really hard. And things are uncertain. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, competing priorities was like a common theme that a lot of business leaders had challenges with. The reality is the goal is to hold them like this. And when you hold them like this, it gives you the ability to move and shift, right? We know what works. We know what doesn't. How can you focus on the intangibles? That's, for me, why I think focusing on those soft skills are so important. There are hard skills that you have to have in order to do a job, but soft skills can also help you have the ability to hold your goals like this, even in uncertainty, so that you have the ability to pivot. If you are not flexible, if you can't flex, being able to flex, to me, is a soft skill that is necessary in today's workforce. Here, right? So even in uncertainty, you can make plans, you can set goals, but you have to hold them like this, knowing that they could very well change. And then how you respond with your team or how you respond individually will be the ability. Can you have the ability to kind of do that in a way that allows your team to continue to pivot and move forward, right? That's how I would answer that question. So given uncertain times, that's what I would do. Set your goals, set your priorities, what you need to get done, but then hold them like this and not like this. Because it's not a matter of if it'll change, it's just when that's going to change. It's going to change. If You've been in any type of environment, business environment, you're going to know it's going to change. All right. Nicole has a question. Okay. What would you suggest to keep the momentum going after the new year? Good question. So you've built up this momentum. Let's just say I gave really great advice and you have the momentum going into the new year after the new year. I think once you've got the momentum going, right? So we're here. We ended the year. Woohoo! Okay, you've got them edging. We come back from the new year, and you want to keep it going. I think one of the things that I'm always constant, like I'm mindful of, because I'm even guilty of it, right? Start a new month, start a new week, new month, new year, new me, right? Like people have this energy. And so we have to be careful that the momentum doesn't mean that we take on more. Whoop. Dang, that'll preach, right? The momentum doesn't mean that you take on more. Your momentum means that how can I actually keep this energy up? It's like, okay, so number one, keep the momentum going after the new year. Revisit what you talked about. People have had time off. People have had time to think, potentially dream, understand. So revisit what you said, what was getting everybody excited. Make sure that it's still the right thing at the start of the year, to make sure that you do that. The second thing that I would really focus on to keep the momentum going is like those check-ins, those moments, celebrating those wins, small wins, big wins, quick wins, like all of it to keep that going, are really, really important. But the sneaky part about losing momentum at the start of the year is because everybody is energized, they want to take on more, right? Like, you guys know how that goes, right? Like beginning of the year, they'll be like, new year, new me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do all of the things, right? And so I think the goal is like to keep the momentum going, focus on the critical few, and create that energy around the critical few and keep that going and keep it up. I really love, oh man, y'all, I'm going to get a new tablet hopefully soon. If my husband's still watching, fingers crossed. That'll allow me to kind of draw as we're going through this. Cause I'm a teacher at heart. So I like that. Like I'm a visual person. Right. But what I would say is this, Nicole, like if you think about like what are some quick wins that you can get, right? And so when I think about quick wins on the matrix of like if we were looking at a matrix, right? You're looking at high impact, low effort, right? And hold on, let's see if I can pull this up. Let's see if I can get a matrix going real quick. Come on, matrix. Yas. Okay. Let me make this bigger and I'm going to share this really quick because I think this is good. This is a good question. Go away, pop up. All right. So how do you keep that momentum going? It's this right here. So what I'm sharing with you right now is the action priority matrix. I guess this company drew it on their website. I don't know anything about product plan, but they had the image that I wanted to show you. So you keep the momentum going at the start of the year by focusing in this area right here, high impact, low effort, quick wins, right here. If you can get this going, I think that's the way that you can really keep that momentum going. What are some quick wins that you can get in Q1, right? January, February, March. Identify those and then go after those, because typically your major projects, which is your high impact, high effort, those are going to be the things that may take a quarter, 2 quarters to a year to complete. But to keep the momentum going, you're going to get these quick wins. And so one of the hacks for getting the momentum and keeping the momentum and getting it up and keeping it high is figuring out how you can take these major projects and break them down so much so that you're just stringing together a ton of quick wins, right? Like take this break it down to where you can get a series of these month over month over month over month. Because like I don't know about y'all, but like when you work on that project that takes forever, right? Like it's like, oh, this is gonna be a 6-month project, a year-long project, or it's one of those projects I would say is like evergreen because it's always iterating. Like, so you've got to get really important, like to get that momentum and keep the momentum at the beginning of the year. It's going to be super duper important to figure out how to identify those wins, get some quick wins at the start of the year, get those under your belt, and kind of go from there. You know, a really good example of that is like football. Like, think about it. Like, at the beginning of the year, there's typically, oh, that was weird. lost signal there for a second. But typically at the beginning of the year, like if you think about football, with the exception of the NFL, but more or less college, what you find that they do is they schedule I just want to they schedule I just wanted to make sure, sorry. I had the stream on the left side, so I got sidetracked. I just wanted to make sure it picked back up over there. But they schedule these easier teams, right? So they'll schedule like unranked teams. Be like, man, why are they playing this like Division 1 team, but they're like further down Division 1, right? Like, why are they doing that? Well, it's to identify some quick wins, some blind spots, all of that. That's kind of how I think about it. So, what are your momentum builders, right? Your momentum builders may be offsite. Your momentum builders may be quick wins. It may be it could be planning sessions. Like all of these things are going to be really re-energizing for the team, right? Reviewing goals, setting goals, putting those goals in place and pen to paper is another way that you can maintain the momentum. So that's like a really good question. I love that question, Nicole. Great question. All right. Well, you know what? You know what time it is? It's 2:58, which means we're just about out of time today. But here's what I'll tell you. Thank you so much for joining me. This one has been a blast. I have so much fun talking about what it is that I'm really passionate about, which is culture, leadership, and high performing organizations. When we think about the amount of time that we spend working in work at work and with our peers, it makes a difference. When you have good leadership, it makes a difference when you are pouring into yourself and getting better as a professional, but also getting better as a leader. Because I think that those things matter. And if nobody else has told you today, thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for the things that you're doing. Next week, I just want to give you guys a sneak peek because I'm looking. Next week's topic, we're going to be talking about work-life balance during the holidays. I'm going to retire the word work-life balance. It really is work-life integration. So we'll be talking about what that looks like, the importance of unplugging, like all of those things. So that's what we're going to cover next week. I'll talk about it in the newsletter. And then from the newsletter, we'll talk about, we'll hop into the live same day and discuss it. If you are not on the newsletter, you can go to LatoyaCollinsJones.com. That's where you can find me. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. I appreciate y'all. And I'll see you next week, Tuesdays at 2. Peace.